start. So, hello everyone. This is Doug Wilkerson with Saturday Night Live Life Recovery Ministry, and we're so glad that you're here with us tonight. And we're going to start off with a little bit of breathing exercise. That's always really good. And the reason why I do this is for several different reasons, but one is to just kind of help us as a group that's in Zoom, and for you out there that may want to participate out on Facebook and YouTube. And by the way, if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, try giving us a like or a comment, something along that line. That really helps our algorithm. So we're going to, well, I got notifications, and I think this is it right here. Yeah, all right. And so, yeah, that's it. And so I made a promise to myself here when we was having all of our technical problems that I would always check things before we went on. So anyway, since I've decided to do that, guess what? We're having less problems. So I'm going to keep on trying to do that. So anyway, our breathing, and that's to help us to synchronize, but it also helps us mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to kind of slow down, focus, and kind of get into that space that that we're able to be more open, receptive. So, all right. So we're going to do the breathing in twice, and I'll just say inhale once, inhale twice, and we'll probably have some other people show up, and if we do, that'll be fine. I had some that said they were coming, but anyway, we'll see what happens. So let's inhale once, and then twice, and then exhale through our mouth. Just let it go and let it all the way out. Inhale once, inhale twice, and exhale through our mouth all the way out. If you can put your hand on your heart, that helps, because where we touch, that's oftentimes where we can focus better. So inhale once, inhale twice, all the way in, and then exhale through your mouth, and just let it go. Just let it flow out. Now think it's something that you're grateful for, you're thankful for, something that's been good in your day to day. Think about it. Now inhale once, inhale twice, and then just let it out. Continue to reflect on that, and let's do it just one more time. Inhale once, inhale twice, and then exhale. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we are going to turn it back over to our MC tonight. And Zach, you're the man, and we're going to pass it over to you. I know, where are we at?
All right. Well, thanks for being here tonight, everybody. And we are going to get started. So without further ado, please welcome Lisa. She's going to read the 12 steps for us. So here's Lisa.
All right. Well, for those of you who can see the screen now, please just follow along. So the 12 steps. Step 1, we admitted that we were powerless over our problems and that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2, We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3, we made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. Step 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Step 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. Step 7, we humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. Step 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Step 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lisa. And we're working on step 4, and Paul's going to do that for us. So please welcome Paul.
Good evening, everybody. Step 5 is kind of the scariest step, I believe, because we have to trust somebody. And for a lot of folks, we've been abused by everybody that we've tried to trust, and they have not lived up to that expectation. But anyway, it says we've admitted to God, ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. To do that is difficult, and it kind of puts us in a catch-22 kind of situation, because to have freedom, and that's the section I have, is freedom through confession. To have that freedom, we have to be able to let go and get out of the bondage of whatever our addiction is. And addiction isn't the substance that we use. It's not the alcohol, it's not the drugs, it's not prescribed medications, it's not anger cutting and all those things. That's not what the addiction is. What the addiction is the problem that causes us to need those things to be able to push them away and hide them and make them not hurt so bad for a while. And that's the thing with addiction, is there's some underlying problem that we cover up so that we won't feel the pain of whatever it was that has been done to us, or the guilt of whatever we think that we did. And so we carry it inside of ourselves, and then we have to have some sort of a substance or action to make us feel better about it. And we need to be able to confess that so that we can get freed from it. And James 5:16 is the verse that goes along with this. It says, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that they may be healed. The earnest prayer of a righteous person has great power and produces wonderful results. That confession and working together gives us freedom. And the first part of that's real easy. We made the list of the faults that we have, and it's kind of hard because if you're like me, I read ahead and I knew that we have to do something with that at some point, and I didn't want to make the list, but I made the list for step 4, and it's easy for me to admit my problems to myself because it's still my secret and it's still hidden. And then it comes time to admit it to God. That's pretty easy too, because God's not going to tell anybody. I know that He's not going to tell anybody here. So it's kind of like still having my garbage is still my secret. But the other part of step 5 is being able to share that with somebody else. And we need that, but we also fear that, because I've made a list of all my garbage and I'm getting ready to hand it to somebody else. And it can either be the gate that opens my prison, or it can be the hammer that that person's going to use to hurt me with. So then it becomes something that's really, you have to be cautious with. You just can't turn those things over to the first guy you come to. You need to have some trust. The questions in this section, freedom through confession, it says lack of confession and openness with others results in a self-constructed prison. And that's true. And I know for a long part of my life, it was just so much easier not to have friends, because if you have friends, you have to tell them things and you share things with them. And so I totally isolated myself. And when you totally isolate yourself, then you wind up in your own head with your own baggage and your own garbage, and it will drive you crazy. And that's where that turns into addiction, because we have to have something to cover that up. And it's a whole list of things that we call addiction. But I had made my own prison and had no friends. I wasn't hateful, I wasn't mean, I just didn't let anybody in. But to have freedom, you have to get rid of your garbage. And the only way to get rid of your garbage is to pull it out into the light. And the only way to pull it out into the light is to let somebody else see it. I heard a really cute story on the radio about a little boy, and he was afraid of the dark. And his dad assured him, said, "You're in there, but God's with you." And the little boy said, "Yeah, I know God's with me, but I need somebody with skin on." And that's what we need. We need somebody that we can look at, that we can trust, and somebody who will just unlock the key to the prison that we've made for ourselves. And the second part of that is, do you know what it's like, and describe it, which I have done. But whenever you can trust somebody, and I will advise you, don't just trust anybody and everybody, and don't trust somebody with all your stuff up front. You need to make sure that that person earns your trust, because you don't want to have another person damage you. But you have to look for that person that you can trust and give them something small. But the first thing you'll find out is when you crack the door to let them in, a little bit of light comes in. And your garbage in the dark is much worse than your garbage in the light. And as the light comes in and you open that door and you bring something out and you share it with them, you may find out that they've had the same problem or done the same thing. And you've spent your whole life thinking, I am the most evil person that ever existed. Nobody's ever done this horrible thing that I've done. And when it comes out into the light, it's like, a lot of people have had that same thing. You're not on an island by yourself. You're not alone. And suddenly, out in the light, this horrible big monster problem fades into just like a little mouse, and it's harmless. But it had scared you for so long and kept you in prison. And you pull that out and you give it to somebody, and you find out that I did that and I'm safe. And when you realize that I can bring out this small little thing and I can be safe, then you can go back into that dark closet where we've hidden this stuff, and you can bring out something a little bit bigger and very cautiously show it, and the light shines on it, and it's not as bad and ugly as you thought it was. And with this person that you've trusted and built a relationship with, now you have a couple of things and you're still safe. And so you can go back into that closet and you can bring out all your stuff just a piece at a time. And as you share those things, you realize, hey, I'm safe. And at some point, I don't need liquor to make me feel good to cover up all those things that I've taken out of the dark. And I don't need drugs, and I don't need anger, and I don't need to work 20 hours a day to hide from whatever it is it was, or I don't need to do something to cover up the pain that I felt from that, or I don't need to do something to cover up the guilt that I felt from that. But the only way that you can do that is by sharing that first little piece. And it can be scary as hell to make that first little crack in the door to let somebody shine some light into your life. But you got to do it. You got to have the courage to move forward, or you'll stay in that prison that you've made for yourself. The third comment or question here says, reflect on God's command to be open, not just to him, but also with each other. God designed us knowing that we need him, but he also designed us knowing that we would need each other. It's just like, I'm a strong man, not as strong as I used to be, but I used to be like a stud. And if I had to pick up something that weighed 100 pounds, like, no, I can get it. And I would do it myself and in my own power and in my own way. And now, if I need to pick up something that weighs 100 pounds, I am so much better off if I look somebody else and say, hey, can you get the other end of this? And then we pick it up together and we can move 50 pounds apiece. It's just so much easier to do that way. And another thing that happens in that is when you let the light shine into your life, you can also shine back into somebody else, because you never know when the guy the one that's helping you is going to look at you and go, hey, can you get the other end of this? This load's a little much for me to handle. And that's why we develop friendships as well as sponsorships. I like to be a friend, and it's kind of a fine line to walk in there as you do it. But I work better on a more friendly basis with people, get to know. But you can't make your own prison. You can, because you have, and it works. It's miserable, but it works. And to be out on an island by yourself, handle everything all alone by yourself. And the fact is, we think we're handling it all alone by ourselves, but we're handling it all alone because we crawled in a bottle, or we crawled in a needle, or we crawled in a dark cave where nobody can touch us, and we put up walls and you stay away from me. And you can't have a happy life that way. But when you open up and you trust somebody enough just to let a little light in, and like I say, I recommend you do this slowly, because you don't want to just dump all your garbage out. Some people it would overwhelm. Some people you'll find out you couldn't trust. That's why you want to start with the little thing. Here, I'm going to trust you with this and see what you do. Are you going to beat me up with it? Or are you going to tell everybody else what's going to happen? And then it's like when they look at you and go, oh, yeah, I've dealt with that before. I had the same problem. And here you've been kept in the dark by your own self. And it's a lie from Satan that you're all alone, because you're not all alone. You haven't done anything that thousands of other people haven't done. But in your own head, you think that you're the most awful person in the world. And when it comes out in the light and you find out that, oh, yeah, I've done that. I know other people have dealt with that. This is how you get through it. I'm going to help you walk through it. And you keep just cleaning out that closet a little bit at a time. And all of a sudden, one day you wake up and you go, hey, I'm happy. I'm happy. I don't need that garbage anymore. I can be happy. I don't have to be guilty for something I did when I was 12 years old. That's forgiven. It's gone. And, but it's a bold step. Need to take the bold step. God in James 5:16 said, confess one to another. He planned that for a reason, because he knew we would need not just being ourselves, not just him, but we need somebody with skin on that he put there with us to help us walk through these things. So as you're going through the steps, at this step is where you look for somebody you can trust. Make yourself do it. It's hard, especially if you've put up walls your entire life. Those walls are so hard to get past, but when that door swings open and you can go free, it is wonderful. it's an absolute blessing. So that's what I got for you tonight. Open up, let the light in.
Thank you,
That's
Paul.
really,
Sorry.
sorry. That's good, Paul. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're
And
welcome.
I appreciate you correcting me there. We're on step 5. I knew that, but I'm tired, so please forgive me. So, welcome,
Sorry, I panicked
Tommy.
for about 2 seconds.
He's gonna come do reflection for step 5 for us. Welcome, Tommy.
Hello, everybody. Oh, I wrote this about after I read quite a bit about this and went through the questions and everything. And I wrote, "Be real with yourself. Deep down, we know the truth about ourselves." I said, confessions don't necessarily have to always be negative things about ourselves. I said, they say honesty is the best policy. Yet that's hard for some of us that are daydreamers and lose focus and drift off into alternate egos and realities. Yet with the questions in the step guide in the Holy Bible, I found you can overcome the delusions brought on by addiction and bad behaviors. Confessions are not always easy, yet as you grow and learn a new way of living by working the steps and becoming involved in healthy ways of living, you see how confession is freeing you from your old self. Be patient with the process. It hasn't always been easy for me to face life after some confessions, thinking that it would come back to get me, yet it did not. And here I am today to let you know I have gained freedoms I never knew possible confessing, because I know there is a day coming we will be judged for everything we do in secret. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy.
All right. Thank you, Tommy. Appreciate that. So without further ado, please welcome Doug.
Thank you, Zach. Before I get started, well, let me add a comment, and then I'm going to ask if anybody else has a comment on what we're doing. And Paul kind of opened this up about the freedom of through confession really is so true. And he cautioned us, be careful about who you select, and I agree with that. But at the same time, how do we know who to pick if we've never ever reached out in that area before? We don't know what we don't know. Does that make sense? And so, and I don't know if this is absolutely correct information here, but my personal experience was it was really hard when I decided to open up to someone. And I thought they were reasonably safe, okay? They weren't as safe as I thought they were supposed to be. And that's I survived, okay? I know more now than I did then, but my point that I want to make here is it was so important to begin that process for me. And until I did that, even if it was, some of it was used against me, it was so beneficial for me to go ahead and make that step. Even though, yes, it would have been better if it was with someone that was really safer, okay? So I just wanted to encourage people to do the best you can to try to find someone that's safe. I think the strategy of doing the small stuff first and testing it out and see how it would go is a pretty good strategy. I didn't use that strategy, okay? Okay, but but those are some of my thoughts in that particular area. I am glad that I did what I did when I did it, even with a person that wasn't as safe as they should have been. But without doing that, I wouldn't have been able to start my my personal freeing process. Any comments from anyone? Just start talking and it'll go to you.
Oh,
Alicia.
okay. I remember, I think in 2009, when I finally admitted that I had a problem with addiction, or I admitted I was an alcoholic and an addict. But before that happened, I remember something welling up inside of me. I believe it was the Holy Spirit. You know, and then I started to get some freedom for a couple of years. I remember I was coming to SNL. I was involved at the road, and and when it got personal and being able to trust somebody, or just even being vulnerable to even admit that I had any more problems other than that, I just can bring myself to do it at that point in my life. And so therefore I was still in prison, in my own problems that God wanted to deal with me with at the time that I wasn't ready to. So I just continued. Maybe after having a couple of years clean, I turned from that and ran from that when I was angry with other people, and I couldn't get past that. And I remember having counseling with you a few different times, and you would ask me every time, how can I help you today? And I didn't even know. I mean, it was just kind of like fun and games to me, but I knew that there was something I needed help with, but I didn't even know the right questions to ask, or even begin to try to work on anything, because I wouldn't let go of anything. And, and God pushed me into a situation last year of, I wanted to be vulnerable, but to the right women or the right people. And I was put in so many different situations where I had to be vulnerable to several different people, because I was being confronted by so many different people about my attitude and my negativity, and just the person that I needed to get free from. So when somebody would say something about how I was behaving or acting, afterward, I would take it into consideration finally, and talk to God about it and say, what do you think about this? Is this true about me? Shine your flashlight in my heart, because, cleaning up the junk, like he was saying, let the light shine in there. Whoever was talking earlier, I don't know who it was, but the things that when you approach the throne of grace, we can go to the throne room of God and ask him about things in our life, and he will remove those things as we ask him. When he will talk to you, and like he's talked to me, and just recently he's dealt with me on selfishness. And I knew that things were wrong with me, but when God says something to you, it's profound. And then taking you through some scripture about selfish ambition or vainglory, or even being conceited, and that's beyond pride, to me. And then he's like, I want this, but he's used so many different people to speak to me about the things that I was doing or how I was behaving or acting. And it's so important to have those people. And I didn't trust any of these people whatsoever. But to be able to trust that one person, I wouldn't have even known how to pick that person. God picked those people for me. So, it's just, breaking free and confessing everything. Because he who conceals his sin does not prosper. And we can't be successful or prosper if we keep everything in, and that's a bondage of its own.
Good. Thank you, Alicia. Appreciate that. Paul, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, you had said that it did kind of come back to bite you a little bit.
Yes.
At least it was out in the light.
Right.
So for you, it had been brought out in the light and been seen as not as big as it was before, even though it did come back to bite you a little bit. But you do need to be careful who you pick. Something that she just said, for those of us who are in a little better condition right now, we need to make a conscious effort to be able to spot somebody who's looking for help and needs to have a little light shined in their lives.
That's true. This may be a little risky, but I kind of, one of the way I kind of start off weighing things with my interaction with people, if they tell me to trust them, I automatically
Don't
pause. How about that?
pause.
Yeah.
There was one other thing she said that's really important, and you don't know the right questions to ask. And I assimilate that to when I was having my heart transplant. The transplant doctor would come in and say, "Do you have any questions?" I didn't have a clue what to ask because I hadn't never been there. I'd never done it. And so it does make sense that somebody wouldn't even know where to start because they're trying to figure out how to go forward and they don't know what they need. But again, some of us who are a little farther down the road, we know how to answer some of the questions before they're even asked.
And I'd add to that point that question is there primarily to try to get the individual to be willing to lean forward or lean into it. Yes, they're there. And you say, well, if they're there, then that means they wanted to. Well, not necessarily. And so it's an ongoing process. And so when you're in a situation, and when I'm in a situation when I don't know what questions to ask, I say that I'm not even sure what to ask, what I need to know, and so and then just that starts a dialogue that's way more open because you ask, and when you ask, opening up that passageway, it begins to that kind of starts the ball rolling for an individual, I believe. John, did you have any comments? Okay. Anything else, Paul?
Nope, I'm good.
Zach, you have any comments?
I guess I would just say that, if you put yourself out there and try to ask for help from somebody or try to practice this, and you do get burned, that you would, the reaction to that is to just, we're not going to do that again. And that's happened to all of us. And, we can't do that. We have to keep trusting others. And as hard and scary as that is, and because that's how we get better, and the thing is God designed this thing for us to get better through relationship. And I don't like that. I'm not the most social guy. And so, I know how it is not to want to tell somebody else your stuff. And I don't have a lot of friends, and I'm not the best friend there is. Some of us can attest to that. I don't do that thing the best. And but the truth is that we have to, even if we get burned, we have to recognize that wasn't us. That was that person that didn't understand the process. And we have to kind of pray for them that they'll get it one day, because if they're telling your stuff, they're not telling their stuff to anybody. And that's the truth. And even if it seems like they are, it's not real stuff. And so they're very much alone. That person is telling your stuff, and that's the truth. And so that person is very much alone, and they're not as healthy as you are trying to get better. And so if you've been out there and you've been burned, I would just encourage you to keep trying. Keep trying to find you somebody you can trust. And we kind of carry. Lisa and I were talking Friday, yesterday. I guess that's yesterday. The days are running together for me this week. The secrets we keep for one another. The work that we do. The stuff that we do. This the secrets that we keep for people. And I have a personal rule. I don't tell other people stuff. But the truth is that we kind of carry water for one another, and that's kind of an old saying. But when somebody else needs a drink, and we kind of people can tell me things, and I can tell other people things that I know it isn't going to go anywhere, and that that gives me an opportunity to drag that stuff into the light, and it doesn't keep kicking my butt, and it gives me freedom and peace. And so that's a very powerful thing. And so if you've been burned, don't fall in that trap. Keep looking for that person that'll keep your secret for you, and you can keep a secret for them. So
That's good, Zach. And I want to add this thought is some of the things that we have hidden and that we have then revealed, and maybe someone has told it. As we get better, eventually, not always, but a lot of the times, we tell the stuff that was so hard to tell. We're willing to tell it to just about anyone to try to help them. And so my point here is, it seems so overwhelming in the beginning, but one day you're probably going to be communicating that in a much freer way, because you got freedom.
And that was something I was thinking. Did I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. And that was something I was thinking about, but I didn't want to go there. But you did. There's another side of this coin, is that, like what you're talking about there, as we tell our stuff, we're broken, fragmented people. But as we tell our stuff, when we make those pieces of us that are separate from the whole, when we make that part of our story, they come back into the whole. And so we become more together. And that's what we're all asking God to help us do, is put us back together. And so, that's the byproduct of this thing, is that, we put ourselves back together by doing this. There's healing in this. And when we start making those things that we hide part of our story, then they, it's healing.
Yep. Did Lisa have anything she wanted to say? No. Tommy, anything? I just trying to complete the circle. Let's see. I think that's everyone. So the scripture, and Paul already read it, but I want to just touch on it. And that's out of James 5:16. And it was, confess your sins to each other. And we're talking about freedom through confession. And it's so important that we come to the place that we're able to communicate that to somebody else. Now, this is out of James 5:16, and this is the NLT version. And so it says, confess your sins one to another and pray for each other. Now, for some reason, when I was preparing this, those two phrases just kind of really jumped out at me, as confess your sins one to another and pray for one for another. And that there's some there's some really deep stuff there. I mean, I've been familiar with that scripture 40 some years, but there's some deep stuff in that the confession gives us freedom, and that prayer helps us to connect to power. And when you pray for somebody else's stuff, your stuff gets prayed for, whether it's directly or indirectly, and it makes a difference. And the rest of that scripture is in the earnest prayer of a righteous, or some righteous means right standing with God. And the only way we can be right standing with God is that if we accept his forgiveness. That's called grace and mercy. And so the earnest prayer of a righteous person has great power and produces wonderful results. Things happen when we confess and we pray. I just wanted to make sure that Paul covered that pretty good, but I just wanted to touch that one more time before I go into my information I'm going to be giving. One of the statements that I also got out of the literature, out of step 5, out of the Life Recovery Bible, is that admitting our failures is an essential step to forgiving and healing. Admitting our failures is an essential step to forgiving and healing. And we need to recognize that. And probably that statement right there is really what set me up for what I'm going to be talking about here in a moment. And I'm going to be talking about healing guilt, 7 steps to self-forgiveness. I've been a proponent of forgiving yourself for, I don't know, years, okay? Loving yourself and forgiving yourself. Because oftentimes we can accept God's forgiveness, but we're not able to forgive ourselves with his forgiveness. And so, and that puts a block up there, which it's with a good intention that we're trying to get better, but we're using punishment as a form of trying to help us get better or to fix us. And punishment does not repair. Punishment destroys. Okay. Now, what our intention is to give ourselves guidance to be on the right track. But guidance and punishment is not the same thing. So, another comment that I wanted to touch on, and again, our topic tonight is freedom through confession. And it's when we carry feelings of guilt and shame, it's impossible to feel good about ourselves. I'm going to say that again because it's important. When we carry feelings of guilt and shame, it is impossible to feel good about ourselves. And that's what confession here is all about here. Getting freedom from guilt and shame. Guilt is recognizing that we've done something wrong. Yes, if you've done it wrong, it's wrong. We need to recognize it, we need to deal with it, and then we need to go on. Beating ourselves up for the mistake doesn't make it better. Okay, that doesn't help us. Now, making a mistake or doing something wrong or living a life that's been that's hurt other people and ourselves or our family, oftentimes then we go past from looking at it as a mistake and being guilty. We go into then shame. And shame is not saying I made a mistake, but shame is saying that I'm a mistake. I'm what's wrong. I'm what's bad. And then you're just lugging that heaviness around with you. And as that statement I made a while ago, you can't feel, you can't have any good feelings in your life. You can't have any or very little peace if you're loaded up with shame and also guilt. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to be talking about 7 steps. Any comments from anybody before I start into the 7? Okay, turn your mic on and begin to talk.
I just want to say something real quick about the pain that comes before the healing. I'm probably not saying that right, but the amount of pain, the healing that we need in our soul, our mind, and emotions, it's going to be painful, and it's hard to admit those things. And if you can't, get alone with God and cry out to him and tell him what's going on, and he'll heal your soul, and he'll remove those things from your heart. And that's what he did for me. And he'll soften you, but it's going to be painful. So I just wanted to say to everyone to be aware of the pain, and that it's going to produce something good. There's something on the other side of it. So when you're feeling that, just go through it, no matter what it feels like. It's good, you know, that we feel pain for the first time in our lives and allow it to come in order to clean us up.
That's good. And I say, in the healing process, all healing is painful. And oftentimes I say that it will feel worse as it's getting better. And that's basically what you alluded to. Because whether it's natural healing or emotional spiritual healing, it does feel worse because you're more aware and you're trying to deal with something that you have either avoided or found ways to cope with or numb out or avoid, to deny, go black on, you know, whatever. And when you start addressing it, then you're more sensitive and you're more aware of the pain, and it feels worse as it's getting better. And it is important. Also, you have to resist against our natural urge, because our natural survival mechanism is to avoid pain and seek pleasure. That's part of our survival mechanism. And we have to recognize that, no, I need to address this pain. I need to step into this pain. I need to be willing to, as I told one person one time, you need to reach out and pull that into you. I know it's hard, I know it's scary, and it feels painful, but you have to address it. You have to deal with it. You have to become aware of it so that you can change it. And when you do that, it's like going to the doctor and finally telling them what's going on. My dad died because he didn't go to the doctor. He held out as long as he could, and it got away from him, and could never catch up. At least that's what I believe. And that if he'd have went sooner, if he'd went on and responded to the pain, then his outcome could have been better. How much of that very same thing happens to us or people we know that we didn't go ahead and deal with that we know that we should be dealing with, and we deny, hide, and numb to avoid it. And the only way to get better is addressing the pain and processing it. And one of the tools is confession. And that's what tonight's lesson is about, that we've been covering here out of step 5. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit healing guilt here, 7 steps to self-forgiveness. So we're talking about addressing guilt in our life. And we got 7 things here. We're already right at an hour. I'm gonna try to go real quick. I'm not gonna try to hit everything. This is an article off the internet, Psychology Today. So this is what they said, that your ability to forgive yourself and practice self-compassion is a vital element of self-esteem. I think that's an important statement. When you carry this guilt, this feeling of guilt and shame, it's impossible to feel good about yourself. When you believe you've done something wrong, then that's guilt, like I've already said. Or when you believe that you, the person, you are wrong, that's shame. I've already touched that. Forgiving yourself will help lift that heavy burden. I want to say that again. Forgiving yourself will lift that heavy burden. How do you forgive yourself? Well, as a believer, and we are a faith-based organization, but as a believer, and if you're not even a believer, that you know that you have been forgiven, you need to forgive yourself. You need to accept that grace that has been provided to you and forgive yourself. You have to let it go. And that grace is to you even if you're not a believer, okay? Some will disagree with me on that. You can. But I have seen that actually happen with folks. But who's to say who is a believer anyway? Okay? I'm not. I used to think I was good enough to judge that. I was a lot dumber back then. Think about that one. And so when we forgive ourselves, according to Psychology Today here, that it lifts the burden of that emotions and increases our feeling of self-worth, because you're not carrying that around anymore. Okay? We don't have to carry it around. We've done something wrong, we address it, and we need to let it go, whether you're a believer or an unbeliever. Okay? Guilt and forgiveness, that when we've broken rules and we've gone against our moral code, because we all have a moral code, okay? And the scripture that we used here tonight out of Romans 12, 14, and 15 talked about, I'm just going to paraphrase it here, that people that lived up to the law of God, even though they don't know the law of God, they lived up to it because it was inside of them, that moral code, because we all have that, whether you believe it or not, it's there. And we all know what's right and wrong. That's moral. Okay. And it goes on and said in verse 15 that when we follow that guidance of our heart, that moral code, that character, if you will, then we actually are living up to the law of God that we're not even aware of, because it's already written in our heart. And that when we do that, then we are allowing that code to guide us, to help us to know when we've done something wrong. And don't forget, and that we have done something correct. Okay? That we've done, I've done the right thing. I've made the right choice here. I've made these steps, and that enhances how we feel about ourselves and what they said here, self-worth. Okay? So, but if we've done something that's been wrong, and we all know this, we know when we've done stuff wrong, it haunts us, it nags us, it works on us, and that's when we need to go ahead and deal with it. confessing it to somebody else, confessing it to God. We have to come to freedom. We don't have to carry that stuff around. Okay. So every time you turn, it's okay. We got that. The only way that you can resolve the uncomfortable emotions you're experiencing is to forgive yourself. Period. Stop. Hard stop. We have to forgive ourselves. We can accept God's forgiveness, but oftentimes I don't know how I probably thousands of people I've talked to that said that's the problem. I can't forgive myself. And we go through that process. You're not doing yourself any favors by holding unforgiveness. You're not helping God out. You're not helping anybody out. You're not even helping out the people that you may have hurt, if that's the reason why you won't forgive yourself. You're not helping them by negatively affecting you. Okay? You help yourself and the world and those people that you've harmed or hurt by forgiving yourself. Okay? Number one, own what you've done. That's so important. We've already talked about that. We have to own what we've done. We have to be willing to fully accept it. Now, the reality is, in the beginning, we can't fully accept it, but we have to accept it. I'm just trying to be real here. We have to accept as much as we can. We got to put our toe in that door, okay, to deal with it, to start that process, to become accountable, because we can't handle the truth totally. So we have to start somewhere. It's just the way that it is. Now, some people may disagree with me, but I've been there. I've lived it, worked with people. Okay. And that's my personal experience. And I've seen it. And it's the path of setting yourself free by starting that process and forgiving yourself. Number two, understanding why you did it. Okay. Understanding why you did it. Now this is a pretty big one right here. I mean, this is really big because we don't normally talk about this, but I think it's significant. Okay. So number two is understand why you did it. We ask ourselves, we take the time to reflect on it and why I did that. Okay. And try to re-experience the situation, because we can feel guilty and bad and tear ourselves up. But see, there's a reason why you did what you did, even if it was bad stuff, but there's a reason why. And what I'm saying is and actually what they said here, and I said the same thing, you have to look at why you did it. What need in your life that you were trying to address, even though it was destructive, okay, and you feel bad and guilty for it. But if you can recognize the why you did what you did, then you can begin to look or find healthy or healthier ways of approaching it, okay, to deal with it. Like in recovery, we talk about, relapse prevention. Realize that you are having some urges or some reactions or some thoughts or some dreams or something, some circumstances, and you're becoming aware. Well, why? You need to look, you need to tear that apart. Well, why did this happen? What's going on? What do I need to do? What can I do to help myself, okay, in a healthier way, okay, to not hurt yourself anymore or others around you. And so that you, because I know, I believe this, and this is out of their information too. I believe that our intention is to do the best that we can for ourselves, even when we're all messed up. Our intention has always been to survive. to try to do it better. And the trouble is, in the beginning, we operate off of what we know, and most of what we know is destructive. Hope that's not too much, and so when we're trying to turn this around, even when we're trying to turn things around in our life and we mess up, okay, we just did what unconsciously we already knew. And so how we set ourselves free and get rid of that guilt is we tear that apart and find out why I behaved that way and how can I best address those needs, those weak areas, those flawed areas, those tendencies, to help me to construct a better life scenario to get me where I want to go. Instead of, as a friend of ours, a lot of ours would say, that a guy, he always said that he bounced along the bottom for multiple years. And so thank God he bounced along the bottom, okay? Because he was just trying to pull things together, and he did get better. So when you learn that need you were trying to meet, you can find some constructive ways to fill that same need now and in the future. I just wanted to read their line to kind of put a period on that. I'm going to ask for comments here in a minute after I do number 3, because number 3 ties to number 2. Learn, this is number 3, learn from your mistakes, okay? Learn from your mistakes. After mindfully considering the events and its repercussions, okay, because if we'll stop and look at what's going on, mindfully look at that and tear it apart, begin to look at it, that's part of recovery, okay? That's a necessary part. And it's painful, just like we talked about confession. It's painful, but it's healthy. And it's hard to communicate that. You know it after you've gone through it, but when you're facing that ugliness and pain, it's hard to step into it. And that's the reason why groups and people and sponsors and trusted individuals that can help lead and guide and support is so important, because we don't heal alone, even though we all try to. So if we can use some of the system that we talked about in number 2 there, and think about how you are better today than before, okay? And that's one of a major part of these tools, is because oftentimes we compare ourselves to all the good parts of people to our bad parts, okay? And we don't see how much we've gotten better. And just being willing to look at this stuff that's crawling around on the inside of you and inside your brain, it's a big step. That's brave. That's brave. I'm going to say it one more time. That's brave. Congratulations. It's brave. And so I want to encourage you. It's hard, but it's doable. It's not over in a day, a week, a month, a year. It takes some time, and it's piece by piece. And as Zach said earlier, we are fractured, broken individuals, and we're trying to bring this back together. And I understand there's some special vases and pottery from Japan that they highly prize some of their vases, because they put them back together. They kind of cement them or glue them back together with gold. And they are valuable because they've been broken and they put back together. Okay. And you're more valuable when you're put back together. Not that you're not valuable before, but you have so much to offer and to give. You have increased your self-worth and your value to yourself and to others. You become I know I've kind of waded off in here, but you've become a greater asset. That's from my opinion. Okay, that's my opinion, and I've seen that to be so. So when you have learned and you've learned how to improve your life, these changes in you make you, hope you don't mind me saying this, but a better person. You see yourself differently, others see you differently. You feel better about yourself. And one of the instruments or tools or guides that I give people is that if you want to know if you're heading in the right direction in a certain area, and that is just sit back and feel yourself, feel your heart. Do you like yourself better or do you like yourself less if you do that? If you're going to like yourself less, I recommend you not to do that. If you like yourself more, then you're going to build your own personal integrity because you keep doing those things that's in your best interest. And that's recovery. That's recovery. And I know it's hard. And how many people have I talked to that's been in the sickness of addiction, and they describe it like there's nothing they can do about it. It's a driving force. And yes, you have the drugs, you have the thoughts, you have the feelings, you have the fear, you have all that stuff pushing you, and it's tough to turn it around. But you have to start somewhere, and it's hard. And the best way to do that is to get connected with some safe people that can love you and accept you right where you're at. And that's the reason why here at Saturday Night Live, we say you're welcome here, drunk or high, angry, upset. I mean, we've had people come in raging, and you're welcome to be here, and we will allow you to be here as long as you don't diminish the ability for others in the meeting to receive the meeting. We can't allow you to take over the meeting, but we are willing to try to walk or sit or be with you in the midst of that stuff that's going on. And we've had people that have had some mental, emotional stuff, and we try to be considerate of them and help them go through that because we believe that there's healing in being with people that can see you and love you for just the way that you are, knowing that we don't say that you have to change, but we also know that if you'll give us a chance, we're not going to make you change, but you will begin to make those changes. We've seen it. It's happened. How many times have I talked to folks that said, all I'm trying to do is stay alive. I just want to come into this meeting and get something out of it so I can stay alive. And we try to keep you alive. And while we're trying to keep you alive, we're trying to get you better so that you're not always bouncing along the bottom. I'm about to lose my voice here. So, any comments from anybody? Okay. All right. I'm going to take a quick drink. Number 4, make amends. Of course, the steps talk about this. We'll be talking about that. It's coming up. But we they stated in here, in Judaism, that you must ask for forgiveness of those fellows that you have harmed, that you need forgiveness for, and that you ask this forgiveness, and we all need to ask this forgiveness for the things we've done wrong, so that we can be forgiven. And that's part of the process to start that forgiveness deal. And we're talking about making amends here. This is number 4. And let's see, communicate to the person or persons that you've harmed what your actions, you've harmed with your actions, that you understand the damage that you have done to them, and apologize. Okay, this is part of the amends process. So I'm sorry for the pain I've caused you. I think this is an interesting comment that they had here, and I don't think a lot of people understand it. And they said, remember, saying sorry if you feel hurt is not an apology. If you tell somebody I'm sorry if you're hurt, that's not an apology. I think that's said well. A sincere apology recognizes that I've done something wrong and I ask for forgiveness, no matter if somebody was hurt from it or not. You have to take responsibility for what you've done. You know you've done something wrong. You have to turn it around. You have to make amends and say that I'm sorry I did that. Okay. And when you do that, you're starting to set yourself free. I know that I personally have went to people and told them, I'm sorry that I offended you. Well, they said, you didn't offend me. Well, I'm sorry because it wasn't right what I did. And I knew that I was doing something to me and for me. I was trying to heal me. Even if they didn't recognize it, I knew it. Just as you know it, right? Oh, yeah. Out of Matthew 5:23, I've kind of already touched on this. And this is Matthew 23 and 24 says, so if you are presenting a sacrifice or gift at the altar in the temple, and you suddenly remember that someone has something against you, leave the sacrifice there on the altar. I think that I've always thought that was an interesting statement. And that keeps you in the system if you leave what you were going to give there. Okay. Because our human tendency is, well, I'll just take it with me and maybe I'll get back to it. Maybe I won't go ahead and do what I feel I need to do, but it keeps you in the system. I think it's just neat. And it says, go and reconcile to that person, then come back and offer the sacrifice. So what this scripture means to me is that we're trying to do something good and present a gift, but we realize we've messed up somewhere. We've offended somebody, have done something wrong. Remember, whether they realize it or not, you know you've done something wrong. Okay? This is part of our cleansing process, that the Holy Spirit comes up and says, hey, listen, you want to get better? Take a look at this and deal with this. It's happened to me. Happens to me regularly. Okay? And depending on how you respond to that really dictates how you're doing. What do you think about that? Anyway, so number 4 was make amends. I know that was a long one. Number 5, hopefully the rest of this won't be as long, is atone. And atoning means that we put yourself, regardless, into the action, no matter that you're not minimizing the damage that you've done, but you take action to fix it. Atoning, to set it right, atone or make better. Atoning is not self-punishment, okay? If I punish myself, and I've already touched this a little bit, if you punish yourself, doesn't mean that you are atoning, you're just punishing yourself. Atoning is that we're trying to make reparations. We're trying to fix a wrong. Beating yourself up doesn't do anything for anybody else. Does that make sense? So self-punishment doesn't fix anything. It just tears something down. And we're not even to tear ourselves down. We are to tear ourselves down. We are to correct the error in ourselves, but not by tearing ourselves down, not by punishment. Okay? That's by building up, by correcting, guiding, receiving guidance and guiding ourselves into the right path instead of the wrong path. So atonement is reparative, okay? And we need to recognize that. Number 6, apply lessons you've learned. That's so important. After we've learned something, we need to keep applying it. We actually need to really keep notes on ourselves, what we've learned, because we forget what we've learned. Now, what happens if we forget what we learned? Well, probably you'll get to learn it again. Bam, right? Too much. Okay, so we need to remember what we've learned, those mistakes that we've made. We need to apply this truth to our future self so that we're able to navigate through our life. Ask ourselves, what can I do to ensure I don't make this same mistake again? Well, we remember, we learn, we apply, and we practice, right? Catch it, check it, change it, repeat, right? So, and if we will integrate prayer or mindfulness and to what's going on, then we'll get better. We will heal. We'll allow ourselves to come into healing. And remember, that's what we're talking about here, healing ourselves from guilt here. We have to set ourselves free. And we set ourselves from the guilt, but then we learn how not to make those same mistakes again. Okay? And if you don't stay alert to your thoughts, your emotions, and your experiences, if you don't stay alert to your thoughts, your emotion, and your experiences, it will be easy to fall back into your old behaviors. Isn't that the truth? Okay? And to make the same mistake again. If you're making the same mistake again, you're not learning. You're not remembering. You're not changing. You're not practicing. And if you know, and you can use your thoughts or your emotions or your feelings, your experiences, you can learn your thoughts and your emotions because you can say, wait a minute, I've had this feeling before. I've had this thought before. Where did that lead me? Where did it take me? I don't want to go where I went last time. So I want to have new thoughts. I want to have different feelings. I want to have different behaviors. And I change what I'm doing. Now, that's a good practice. Now, the fact of it is, the first time you do that, you'll still probably do what you've always done in the past. All that means is you need to practice more. That may be tough, but that's the truth. So, Any comments before I go to number 7? Number 7, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. You need to say to yourself, I forgive myself for the mistakes I've made. I think it's really important. This is out of their literature, but I think it's really important to say it out loud to where you can hear it. It does something to you. You hear it come out of your mouth. It oftentimes will even taste funny when you're trying to forgive yourself. That means you need to take be aware of what that means. It's tasting funny. That means you haven't done much forgiving. You need to work on that. You need to practice that. And because probably you've been practicing unforgiveness. You've probably been practicing damnation, being critical, judgment, harshness. So, well, and that don't taste so bad. Well, because you're used to that. So how about forgiving yourself? Ask yourself, just say, I forgive myself. I tell people to look in the mirror, look in themselves in the eye and say, I forgive myself. I also suggest that they look in the mirror and say, I love myself. That is a powerful tool also. So you say you forgive yourself and allow yourself to move towards forward in living the best version of yourself. And that's what we want. You got to lighten your load. You got to forgive yourself. You got to drop that stuff off. You say, well, I did it once and it didn't work. Well, Einstein says it takes 11 positives to offset 1 negative. So it's practice, practice, practice. Neural pathways have to be practiced. You have to change, you have to create these thoughts, and then you have to practice them. And as you're practicing them, then you're not practicing the old thoughts. And if you stop practicing, they will fade. So, and if you don't forgive yourself, you're going to continue to practice those same mistakes over and over again, because that's what's going to be in your head. Because if you keep judging yourself and condemning yourself, then actually what you're doing is you're practicing them, and then you're going to repeat them. It's guaranteed. Okay? And those old messages continue to reverberate in you, in your brain and in your heart and your spirit. So forgive yourself, stop punishing yourself, recognize that you are forgiven. You've been forgiven. You have to stop shaming yourself, and you have to be willing to accept that forgiveness and forgive yourself to have recovery. Even if you can do a little bit of this, and it's going to feel weird, you're going to think there's something wrong with me, but the fact of it is, it's true. I dare you to try it. It will help. And if it seems so foreign, and if you have that funny taste in your mouth and it just seems so overwhelming or cause you great pain, those are all good signs. Stick with it. Stay with it. I remember one time I got on a horse, and the guy told me, well, he may run away with you, but this is what you do. You yank on the bridle, and you push your feet forward in the stirrup, and you holler, whoa. And so I tried all those things, and I hung in there. And I saw that he was heading towards electric fence, the horse was. And so I started sliding off the back of that horse. And the horse and I both went down. And, but that didn't stop me from riding the horse. Okay. Right. We just had to go at it in a little different way. I learned some things not to do. For some reason, I've ridden runaway horses. I was riding a horse one time that wanted to knock you off in tree branches. So when he starts to head, when you couldn't keep him from heading towards the tree branches that are hanging low, you had to, I learned you had to duck down on that back of that horse, or you were going to be on the ground. So problems come, situations come, you make mistakes, you learn from your mistakes, apply what you've learned, practice, 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 and you will get better. You will have recovery mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Your behaviors will change, your life will change, you'll be better. So, any comments before I close out my part? May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you. I really do want him to shine upon you. And that he gives you peace. That you accept that peace. If he gives it, then you deserve it. Why don't you receive it? How about that? Thanks for being with us. Hey, if this was beneficial to you, we'd like for you to give us a thumbs up or a comment or a heart. Hey, a heart would be awesome. So anyway, thanks for being here. I'm going to turn this back over to Zach and close this out. Thanks for being here with us. We're going to try to go live in our have a live meeting next week, but we'll have to let you know because things are not ready to go. But we will hopefully we'll be on Facebook and YouTube no matter what. Well, if technology allows us, of course. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for my Zoom people. And I will go to Zach.
Well, like Doug said, if please join us next week. We hope to be live, but if not, you'll catch us here, and stay tuned to the SNL Facebook page for information on that. And we want everybody to stay safe out there and keep making healthy choices. So good night, everybody.